Well, hey, Vision. Hey, Matt. Okay, we are continuing our series called The Unseen, Part 6. And as we headed into this season called Lent, which started on Ash Wednesday and then culminates next Sunday on Easter, I was praying that we would see God work in amazing ways in our church, in our large group of us, in small groups, in homes, in marriages, in individuals. And so, David and Kim Thorpe, who've been with us since even before the start, I asked them to come share because I've been watching you guys for years, and I know, like all of us, we go through struggles. We go through ups and downs, and particularly in a marriage, we spent time talking about it over the years, and there's been up and downs. So, David, why don't you start us off and tell us, as we're heading into Lent this year, kind of where you guys are at?
Well, we were in a rut. Best way to put it. You know, Kim had some health issues, and that kind of put us in a rut, and that kind of got resolved, and things kind of just stayed in a rut. And I was pretty unsatisfied. With the Lent, I don't know if that's the next question. But
Yeah. Tell us about Lent. But
So-
what were your expectations going into Lent when you said, when I kind of said, hey, we want to see God work? What were you thinking?
Well, you put out the call to several men in the church, and when I heard that, I was like, I'm accepting the challenge. You put out a challenge, is what you did, and I'm like, I'm taking this challenge, and I decided to do that simply because I wanted to see God work in our marriage, and I know the Bible says fasting and prayer, you know, and that's what I wanted.
And you know what's interesting with fasting and prayer? It's like a strange subject that you're kind of not supposed to talk about, but also I think it can inspire other people, because when I look around this room, and I know who some of you guys are that have told me that you're going to be fasting on Wednesdays, and as we headed into Lent, honestly, it scared me. Because I was like, God, I like to eat, okay? I like to eat. And the scary thought of having windows of time, like a whole day, when you wouldn't eat, and instead you'd focus on Him and prayer. And when other guys said, hey, I'll do it too, I was like, okay, God, do something in their lives that shows your power. So, okay, so we head into Lent. You said
So we headed into Lent, and you I think the first week or two, you warned us we're going to get attacked, and I wasn't even really thinking about that. I was just thinking about the end result. I wasn't thinking about getting attacked, and I tell you what, that first week or two, I was getting attacked, and unfortunately, when I get attacked, I end up attacking her, and that's what happened. I was attacking her. I was coming at her with all of my frustration and my anger, and it was rough.
So, Kim, what was that like, the first part of Lent?
With men fasting, they get hangry, for one. Just going to go ahead and say that.
Yeah,
And usually it was on Thursday mornings that were the worst.
really.
Biggest fights happened on Thursday mornings.
Okay.
And I didn't even realize until 2 weeks in that he was doing the fasting.
Okay.
And it was worse. And it came to a point where I felt like I needed to leave.
Okay. It was interesting. I was actually meeting their son for lunch one day. He was back from college, and when we're meeting that day, Kim was dropping him off, and I could see just her face, and I had to kind of pull it out of her that she'd packed up some stuff, and she was moving out. She needed some time away, some space. So evidently that's the bottom, huh? You guys hit the bottom. Hey, so where'd it go from there?
Well, we were texting back and forth, and it was not pleasant texting, I'll be honest with you. But she sent this one text. It was, "Do you even want me to come home?" And I'm telling you, it was just, it's something in me just moved. It was like God was working on my heart, but it was, she was vulnerable. And it was like, I really had to think about it. I stopped, and it was like all this texting back and forth, and it was also I just stopped. I was like, I really need to think about this. You know, because at the time I was angry, and I was like, I don't even care anymore. But it was like, wait, do I really want her home? And so I took time, and I prayed, and I wrote this big old long email. Today's day, it's like we write a letter, but it was me, it's writing an email. And as I'm writing this email, I'm praying about it, and I started off with, okay, God, I need to tell her what I've done wrong. Instead of attacking her, I need to say, this is what I've done wrong. And then when I get to the part where I'm unhappy, I need to say, this, I don't need to say, you do this. It's like, I feel like this, and I feel like that. And I poured my heart out and told her how I felt.
Okay, and then where'd it go from there, Kim?
Just to say real quick, for Lent, he was fasting and everything.
Mm-hmm.
For Lent, instead of giving something up, I'd been starting my day every day with 30 to 45 minutes with God,
Okay, great.
doing devotionals, praying. So I was hearing God louder than I'd ever probably have in the past. So as he's typing this email, God's working in my heart, and I end up going over to talk to him in person before the email even gets sent.
Okay.
And as an alpha personality, it's very hard to go over and be vulnerable. But I think that's where it started.
Okay. And so what did God do from there? Where are we at now?
Well, obviously, God, worked on both of our hearts. There was a lot of things I was unhappy with, and honestly, Kim has made huge changes, and she's really worked hard on the things that I'm unhappy with, and hopefully, I've been working on things that she's been unhappy with. But the main thing that we did, and it was honestly, I have to give the credit to Kim because she came to me with the idea, was she wanted to start doing devotionals because we'd always been doing the Bible app. We always do the devotionals separately. I do my devotional, and she's been doing her devotionals, but she's like, can we do a devotional together? I'm like, yeah, that would be great. Because we always struggle at night to talk, because every time we talk at night, it'd be like we'd bring up all the stuff that was going on. But instead, we were just like, you know what? Let's just get together every night. We're going to do a devotional, and we're going to focus on God. And that's what we did.
Okay. So where are we at now, Kim?
God's in the center, because I can't change him. He can't change me. But God can work through both of us.
I know a couple weeks back, a friend of yours caught me in the hallway and said, Matt, have you talked to David and Kim? I was like, oh, yeah. He said, no, you need to talk to David and Kim. I mean, he had this light in his eyes, like he had heard and seen that things were different and better than ever before. I mean, he just was beaming about what God was doing and said, our church needs to hear about that. So I guess to wrap it up, I guess you're saying, but put God in the middle of it. I mean, I hate to say like the cliche, but the reality is put God in the middle of it.
God is in the center. It's like I've always viewed marriage as a triangle. You've got man, woman, God up here. And as long as we're both moving towards God, we're moving towards each other. But we're moving away from God, we're moving away from each other.
Okay. All right. Well, hey, let's give God a hand. What he's done in their family. Thank you, guys. Thank you, guys. All right. Thanks, Dave. Thanks, Kim. So I want you to understand, this is one tool we've been using, the 40 days of prayer. I love it. Many of you have written it. I'm going to pull a couple things out of there today. But really, when you get down to it, it's getting in God's Word, it's spending time with Him personally, and like we've been talking about through the series, is recognizing there's a battle going on, but it's not with others. It's not with people. There's something underneath the surface. There is this unseen spiritual battle going on. And today, as we continue the series, and I'm talking about the battle before the battle, because if you know church and Jesus at all, you kind of know about Easter. And you're like, okay, so on one day there's a cross, and then a couple days later there's a grave. That is the battle. And yes, we will dig into that next Sunday. And Satan also tries to stop you before then. So literally, there's a battle before the battle. And as we've talked over these weeks about protecting our mind and our heart and having a shield of faith and having a sword of the Spirit, all of these pieces of armor and weapons are to help us, not just in the battle, but also in the battle before the battle. If you got your takeaway card, you got your app, pull it out, because I want you to jot down a couple things about this today as you can learn a little bit more about Jesus, this guy that we believe here at Vision is the Son of God, that he lived and walked on earth for 30 years. And in fact, it's interesting, if you're going through the devotionals at all, you see that this past Friday, there was a devotional that talked about how Jesus didn't start his ministry until he was 30. And some of us were like, God, I want to do something now. I want to feel you now. I want to see you now. And Jesus displayed patience and working through a process to be prepared for ministry. So we pick up today, Jesus, he'd gone to age 30 and then started ministry and only did ministry for 3 years. As we pick up today, it's on the Sunday before the last week of his life. He's been going around teaching, doing a teaching that people would say they were astonished with his teaching. He taught like no one else. He was doing healing. Okay, would anybody in here like to be healed of anything? Now I want to tell you, God's going to start doing some healing in our church. Okay? You just wait. And I'm seeing it, and we're going to see it even more. But Jesus was healing. Jesus was feeding people, thousands of people. He was doing all kind of things where people are like, this guy, Jesus, we got to follow him around. We got to go where he is. We got to get a piece of that. You know, the Jews were saying, this is our hero. Man, this is the guy who's going to lead us to victory and to freedom. And there was all this roar about Jesus. He heads into Jerusalem, and he's kind of like at this crossroads, this fork in the road, where nobody else knew that this was going to be the last week of his life. But he heads toward Jerusalem, and he looks at it, and I wonder if he's thinking, you know, I could just take a right and kind of just stay away from the battle right now, and I'm just going to go somewhere else. And he walks up toward Jerusalem, knowing that people are pushing him there, people are drawing him there. We want you to heal and feed and do all these things. And he looks out, because, you know, Jesus, he has got this perfect visionary mind where he can see what's going to happen and know what's going to happen. And he looks out and he says, if you guys just knew what was going to happen this week, you'd steer to the left. You would go a different way. But he leans into it and he says, okay, the battle's coming. In these next couple of days, it's the battle before the battle. We call it Palm Sunday. When Jesus came up to Jerusalem, as we're going to look at today, the people were excited and they're laying down branches and there's all kind of cheering and stuff going on. But Jesus can look into a person's heart. So even if you're sitting there today saying, man, I love this story. Oh, and the whole Easter story, it's so good, man. It makes me feel so good. Trust me, God looks into your heart and he knows whether you're living it. He knows whether, when you had the chance to take communion today, which I'm explaining at the end, whether communion is just a look back. Because if you've ever been in a church where they have the communion table up front, it says, this do in remembrance of me. And I love that. But today, honestly, we're not doing it to look back. We will take communion to look forward. Because of what Jesus did that last week of his life, it's not just for us to remember it and say, oh, that feels so good. It's to say, there is some other land to take. There's a mission we're on. There's a battle to win. And that is what the unseen is about. So in this story, we pick it up on, again, what's called Palm Sunday. And again, just to patch out the week, to understand the week, this is on a Sunday. He'll go through Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, where he's in Jerusalem, healing, feeding, being questioned. He's going through all these type of trials. Thursday would be his last time with his guys. The Last Supper, if you've heard of that. We'll kind of walk through that. Then they took what we now call communion on Thursday night. And then sometime during the night, he is arrested, taken into the clutches of the Romans. They take him. Friday he dies, goes in the grave. Sunday he's born again. Now, he's risen again. Now, this story, as we patch out the week, I want you to lock it on Sunday. Because Easter Sunday, I'm sorry. Ooh, man, my mind's all over. Palm Sunday, let me slow down. Palm Sunday is the battle before the battle. I want you to pull something out of this. Let's take a look. Luke 19. It says, after Jesus had said this, he went on ahead, going up to Jerusalem. As he approached Bethphage and Bethany at the hill called the Mount of Olives, he sent two of his disciples, saying to them, go to the village ahead of you, and as you enter it, you'll find a colt tied there, which no one has ever ridden. Untie it and bring it here. And if anyone asks you, why are you untying it, just tell them, hey, the Lord needs it. Now, we're going to see some supernatural things happen right from the start. And for me personally, I love seeing supernatural, because David and Kim talking, that was not natural, what God is doing in their marriage and their home. I want to see supernatural. I want to see healing. I want to see people released from bondage. I want to see people living in the authority we've been talking about in the series. That is supernatural. So a couple things I see here that are supernatural. First of all, Jesus, he tells them where this colt or donkey, and you can read the different gospel accounts. They use different terminology. We'll just go with donkey. He says, hey, there's a donkey. Somebody's got it. Go get it. Now, understand, we can't do that. Head into a town we hadn't been in either in a long time. We can't just say, hey, go over here. I know where someone is. I know what they have. Jesus says, look, here's one thing I need. Go over here. Get this donkey. Now, with this donkey, of him choosing to ride a donkey into town, this is really strange. Has anybody ever ridden a donkey before? Has anybody ever ridden a horse before? Okay. I've never ridden a donkey, but actually, I got a picture of my buddy right here. Okay, this is our donkey, Howie, out at the ranch. We named him after actually a guy who had sang out there. I don't know if you've ever been named after a donkey before, or a donkey's named after you. But this guy we named after him, Howie. Now, Howie is very cute, but Howie is not very imposing. Like if you're coming in as a conqueror, you do not come in on a donkey. So Jesus is very intentional in what he's doing to say, I am going to fulfill prophecy that coming into Jerusalem is not about an imposing Messiah. It's about a very humble and strategic leader. So Jesus, he chooses to ride this donkey, which ties in to prophecy. Now, if you're new in church, I'm glad you're here and you're listening to this. And I want you to understand that prophecy is not a scary word. You're saying, oh my goodness, what's some kind of churchy, weird word? Prophecy is prediction. It means literally generations ago, back in Zechariah 9:9, somebody predicted and said this, said, rejoice greatly, daughter Zion. Shout, daughter Jerusalem. See, your king comes to you, righteous and victorious, lowly and riding on a donkey, on a colt, the foal of a donkey. Now, this is really strange because if I'm expecting a conquering hero, I'm thinking a horse, a white horse. There's energy, power. We're kind of bowing down to it of, oh my goodness. A hero usually doesn't arrive on a donkey. Jesus said, I'm a different kind of hero. He said, I'm a hero that was predicted many generations ago. And then in Isaiah 9:6, if you ever heard this maybe around Christmas time, it says, For to us a child is born, to us a son is given, and the government will be on his shoulders, and he'll be called, among other things, the Prince of Peace. And Jesus knew this, that he is the Prince of Peace, and he would come into Jerusalem on a donkey. And he would bring peace. And the people said, wait a second, that is not the way you bring peace. You come in to conquer and kick out the Romans and come in with power. And he said, I'm not talking about that kind of peace, because horses were instruments of war, and so nobody posing as a Messiah would come in on a donkey. So he was saying, look, what you see is what you get. And if you're here at Vision Month, you'll hear me say that. That's what vision is. I mean, what you see is what you get. We're not trying to put on this facade about who we are, about who God is. Jesus is like, look, I am the type of Messiah who will come in on a donkey, and I will offer you peace. Now, the other pieces of supernatural significance is that the owners were willing to give up their donkey, because if someone just comes out to the ranch and say, hey, Miss Meg, can we have your donkey? She'd say, well, no, that's my donkey. There's no purpose in you taking my donkey. Jesus had already spoken ahead to the people saying, you're going to give up your donkey to the Prince of Peace. He moved right there. The fourth thing, though, this is so interesting. It says that this donkey had never been ridden on before. Now, I don't know about Howie, but if I walked up to Howie and tried to get on him, where do you think I'm going to end up? I'm going to be on the ground. I'm going to be tossed on the ground. This donkey, never ridden before, given by somebody who didn't even know they were going to give it up, found in a place where the disciples didn't know it was at. All these things happen to bring up a donkey, and Jesus gets on the donkey, and they couldn't see it, but literally, this is like some of the unseen. I think you say, hey, donkey, you take me where I need to go. Don't you buck me off. And he rides this donkey who's never been ridden before, and he comes into Jerusalem. So we continue on this. It says, those who were sent ahead went and found it just as he had told them. As they were untying the colt of the donkey, its owners asked him, why are you untying it? They replied, the Lord needs it. So they brought it to Jesus. They threw their cloaks on it and put Jesus on it. And as he went along, people spread their cloaks on the road. So this is kind of how they're honoring him. They're respecting him. They're laying cloaks down there, palm branches. When he came near the place where the road goes down the Mount of Olives, the whole crowd of disciples began joyfully to praise God in loud voices for all the miracles they'd seen. This is kind of where we need to do a heart check about why do we get excited about the Son of God? Do we get excited because of the things he does for us? Do we get excited because of miracles? Do we get excited because he feeds us? Do we get excited because he has great teaching? Or because literally he is the Prince of Peace, humbly coming on a donkey? They said, blessed is the King who comes in the name of the Lord, peace in heaven and glory in the highest. Now, these other guys, if you're new to church, you've heard of them, the Pharisees are staying in the back, and they are all part of the battle before the battle. They're trying to rout the crowd. They're trying to intimidate Jesus. They're trying to discourage him. It says some of the Pharisees in the crowd said to Jesus, teacher, rebuke your disciples. And I tell you, he replied, if they keep quiet, the stones will cry out. And if you know me, I love creation. I think creation is one of the best ways to see and experience God. So when I hear this verse and I think about this, I pulled you guys out some images. So first of all, has anybody ever been to the Grand Canyon? Would you say that in the Grand Canyon, the stones are crying out in worship of God? Yes or no? Yes. I would think so. I've never been there, but when I see something like that, I almost stand in awe and say, God, how does this happen? Or next picture, you go to the beach, and it's all these stones, so different. Depends on what beach you're going to, and you're walking on some, and you're finding different stones saying, God, it's amazing what you create. Or even closer to home, the next one, you could just go to Crowder's Mountain and sit out there and just listen for God. And trust me, the stones will cry out. And Jesus is saying, whether people will worship me or not, I will be praised. As a humble Messiah on a donkey, he says, this whole planet understands the greatness of who I am. So it continues, says, as he approached Jerusalem and saw the city, he wept over it. Now, there's only 3 times that we hear of Jesus weeping. One is when his friend Lazarus dies, and 2 other times is when he's in view of Jerusalem. I think partly because he knows what's going to happen there, but I think mainly because he knows that the hearts of the people are really very far from him, and that crushes him. He said, if you, even you, had only known on this day what would bring you peace, but now it's hidden from your eyes. I mean, they thought they understood peace. They thought they understood it. But when you feed us, that brings peace. You heal us, that brings peace. You teach us great things, that's peace. And Jesus says, no, you don't understand. You are racked with a disease that will kill you forever. It's called sin. He said, I have what you need to heal you from that. He ties it into John 1:11, said he came to that which was his own, but his own didn't receive him. And I think about another devotional from this week, actually from Scott over here. He wrote about peace. Because these people who were calling out to Jesus saying, heal us, feed us, lead us to victory, get on a big horse and get us out of captivity, take care of us. And Jesus literally looked at them, and I hope he doesn't look at us and say, you're missing it. He doesn't look you in the eye and say, you're missing it. You're glad I do all these things for you, but do you really know me as a Prince of Peace? And this week, when Scott wrote about peace, Jesus knew that the Apostle Paul would write about this later, actually from jail. So Jesus knew that Paul had this. Because if you're sitting in jail, in shackles, in the dark, in the cold, hungry, and you write about peace, Jesus says, you got it. Because when there's 50 to 100,000 people cheering on the side of the road saying, you're awesome, and 5 days later, he knows they'll be yelling, crucify him. He said, you're not getting it. This is what peace is about. Scott had written that in Philippians 4, he said, remember, God is close by, and he wants to hear from us. So that's amazing. The God of all creation wants to hear from me. He said next, focus on and be thankful for what God already does for us. Then every time we feel stress or anxiety creeping in our day, we run to God with it. Okay, anybody in the last 7 days feel stress or anxiety? I did. I mean, I did. I said, okay, Prince of Peace, be close to me. And he says, okay, so everybody do this. Deep breath in, go. And let it out. Finally, having that closeness with God will bring an intellectual and emotional peace that just doesn't seem to make sense in our crazy world. Jesus said, look, take a breath in, let it out, and understand I'm a different kind of Prince of Peace. I'm coming on a donkey. There's a battle coming on Friday. He said, this battle before the battle, would you walk with me in it? We continue. Because Luke 19, he said he was locked in on this. He said, the Son of Man came to seek and save the lost. He didn't come to lead them to victory against Romans, to overturn armies. He said he came to seek and save the lost. And as Jesus looked over Jerusalem, And it's interesting. Jerusalem typically would have 50 to 100,000 people in it. But this Holy Week, this Passion Week, if you call it, had 1 million people in the town. And he looks out and he weeps. He says, are you missing it? The Prince of Peace. So it continues, verse 43. The days will come upon you when your enemies will build an embankment against you and encircle you and hem you in on every side. What Jesus is doing now, instead of looking back at prophecy, he is now prophesying about the future. He says, they'll dash you to the ground, you and the children within your walls. They will not leave one stone on another because you did not recognize the time of God's coming to you. So understand what's going on here. Take a look at this image of Jerusalem streets. You got all these people, and this is more current day, you got all these people mingling in this town. It's healthy, it's growing, it's bustling, there's energy. And he's saying, you don't understand. A time is going to come when this whole city comes down, this temple comes down. You better grasp what real peace is. Because it's not about a conquering hero on a horse. It's about a Prince of Peace who will be with you no matter what you go through. In the short term, Jesus knew that these cheers would turn to crucify in just days. In the longer term, in terms of 40 years, he knew that Jerusalem would come down, and that did happen 40 years later. It said the Romans would overtake Jerusalem and destroy the city and the temple. He said, all this stuff is temporary. It's going to crumble down. But in the eternal view, in the long-term view, he looked out over 1 million people. And it's like he looks us in the eyes and he says, do you know me? Do you really know me, or are you just cheering me on? Are you just in church clapping hands? Are you just kind of saying, I go to Vision, or I'm a Christian, I'm a God follower? And he looks at us and says, do you really know me as a Prince of Peace? And this takes us then on into his week, because the guys he's with, they were part of this battle. So on your takeaway card, I broke up in 3 pieces about who was in this battle before the battle. Jesus certainly, and then he breaks it out into his disciples and the other people in Jerusalem. Because Jesus, as he looked at this week and he saw Thursday night ahead, he knew that this battle before the battle had you in mind. Because really, the people in Jerusalem, I mean, that's us. That's us that had a chance from a distance to know him and almost to be wowed by the things he could do, but instead say, Jesus, we want to know you deeper and more personally. And this spiritual battle we've been talking about for 6 weeks now, this unseen, it raged on in Jerusalem that week as he taught and went through different types of pressure, and the Pharisees are coming after him. But let me fast forward up to Thursday night. Because Thursday night, he gets together with his guys, and he tells them that he knows what's coming. This, again, is the supernatural knowledge of Jesus, that he looks at them and he says, guys, here's what's coming. He says, tomorrow I'm going to die. They said, no, Jesus, you're not going to die. Man, this is the time you're coming in. There's crowds of people. They're cheering you on. You're going to lead us to victory, right? He says, I know what's coming, but also, guys, I have authority. Remember, we talked 2 weeks ago about authority. When we talk about faith, and this authority has been passed on to us, he looked his guys in the eyes and said, you have the same authority I do. And in the last blank, that there's this temptation to follow Jesus for the wrong reasons. And he sat down with his 12 guys. The last time he would sit with all 12 of them, he sits with them on Thursday night, and he speaks to them and says, guys, temptation is going to come. You're going to be tempted to run away. You're going to be tempted to turn me in. You're going to be tempted to doubt. Jesus said, understand, the authority I have, I'm giving it to you. He says, guys, and he sits them down at this table. And today, as you have a chance to be a part of communion, what he's telling them about is a lamb. Now, for Jews, they understood about the lamb and about Passover. Has anybody ever heard about Passover? Now, Passover is old. I mean, it's back in Exodus, where these Israelites had been in physical bondage, physical captivity. And what they would do is they were in Egypt, and God communicated to them and said, you want to get out? They said, you betcha we want to get out. He said, well, this is what Passover is about. I'm going to send my death angel, and it's going to fly over the town. It's going to fly over your house. It's going to fly over you. And you need a covering to survive. So what you're going to have to do is take a lamb. And this was so hard back then because the family, the kids would personally know, these animals. Say, take a lamb that you know and kill it and put the blood on the door frames so when the death angel passes over, you'll be safe. And the guy said, okay, we got that. We got that, Jesus. This week we're celebrating Passover, right? He said, it's different this week. He looked him in the eyes. He said, guys, this is the last time you will do it with a physical lamb. He said, what's going to happen tomorrow is that I'm going to be the lamb. And they're like, what are you talking about? You need to lead us. You're going to charge us and help us get out of here. He says, no, you don't understand all this right now. But my blood will be shed, and you can choose to accept it so that death will pass you over. And just like us, I think those guys were confused or scared, and one of them, in fact, turned on them, left, turned them in, was a part of that battle before the battle, and Jesus said, that's okay. This has to happen. I'm focused on where I'm going. And he looked his guys in the eyes, and he said, I'm a different kind of prince. There's a different kind of peace that I'm bringing. And if you want that, you will know me personally, and you'll understand what this Passover is about. And he sat around the table with them, and he broke bread. He said, this is my body. And he poured out juice and said, this is my blood. He said, what are you talking about? I don't understand it. He said, you will understand. You will figure this out tomorrow. So I want us to understand that we all go through battles. And Jesus' biggest one was coming on Friday. But there is a battle even before that. There was a battle for David and Kim. Before they got to that winning point, there was a battle going on. And Satan is doing everything he can to drag you down and say, no, I'm not even going to get to that battle. I'm turning off. I don't believe this. God, you're not enough. I don't have the authority. I can't do this. And your enemy is trying to turn you away during the battle before the battle. And I'm here today to say, look, Jesus won this for you.